Okay, my camera's not showing up, so let me get that fixed real quick. But hello, everyone. Hey, Bryce. I see you in chat. Umberto, what's up? Also down here in Boston. Where is the camera property? Oh, now am I showing up? There we go. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm excited to sort of walk you through basically the next 30 minutes as much as I can anyway, all of the cool new stuff that's in version 3 of Cephable. We just launched basically Monday night here. Been a whole bunch of new stuff that the team's been working on, a lot of new on-device AI features specifically focused on making things a little bit more productive, a whole lot of voice features that are out, some things that have been in preview for a little bit that are sort of now the standard, which I'm excited to sort of share. And ultimately, this marks a version 3 for us because it's a big change in how people are interacting with the platform. But I do want to give some special shout outs to some people that, not just folks who built it on our engineering team, from John Campbell, our director of engineering, Cordelia, who I see in chat, Shristi and Caleb as well, that all built a lot of these different features out that ended up in the platform for this big launch. But also to our consortium of folks. If you're here, anyone in the consortium, throw it in chat, let everyone know. Our user advisory board that started testing some of these features out that are now in version 3 like a year ago. So some of these very early concepts that are now the standard of how people are interacting with Cephable. So I'm excited to give you a quick tour. If you're watching, you probably already see a little bit of a difference if you've been using Cephable for the past couple years, starting with our new panel. So when you previously were using your microphone and camera controls, you would have your camera window usually in the bottom middle. It's where most people had it. And your camera controls would be running in the top right. Although you could move them around, you could change them and everything. One of the biggest things that we heard in terms of feedback, not just from our consortium, but from so many people using Cephable is a couple things. One, the windows of those don't need to take up too much space. But two, I'm seeing technical difficulties in chat. Hopefully that's on your side and not on my side, and everyone else can hear me. But anyway, two is that when you're using voice controls and camera controls across all these different apps, being able to quickly and easily see what those actions are that you can take. And so with the panel, which you see over here on the right, you can move it into different spots. So I like to keep it on the right personally. That's the default. You can move it to the left of your primary screen. If you go to your general app settings, you can choose the panel spot to move over to the left, for example. You hit save, it jumps over, which is nice. Top and bottom too, so you can sort of pick where you want it to exist. Just like the other windows, the previous voice and camera control windows, it does stay on top of your other apps. So for example, if I move even the Cephable app over here, the panel sticks on top of it. But the nice thing about it is you can also just collapse it, and you have this nice little tab of being able to pull out Cephable when you need it. When the panel's closed, Cephable's still running. You're still able to use your voice controls. You're able to talk to Cephable's AI. You're able to use the camera controls and everything else the same way that you otherwise would, but you can tuck it away once you're off and running and using it, unless you really need to either take a look at the speech recognition as it's running, or if you want to take a peek at some of the app controls. So for example, if I start my microphone up here, you'll see the speech recognition running, and it's this nice compact view, and I can pause it and switch to dictation mode. You can also very quickly get to your settings for your voice stuff, which I'll get into some of these new settings in a second. But you can also view all of the different controls for the last app you were in. So for example, the last app I was in was Microsoft Teams, because I just came from another meeting, hence why I needed to start 2 minutes late, so sorry everyone. And I can see all of the different actions, because I'm using voice commands, all the different voice commands I can use while in Microsoft Teams. And if I were to open up another app, for example, if I popped open something like a Microsoft Word document, all of those controls automatically switched as well. So I have all these intelligent things I can say to Cephable to take action in whatever application I'm using. If I switched over to my email client, for example, and I wanted to start a new email, then that also switched over to my Outlook controls, because I now have Outlook open in the front and I have my Outlook controls here. And so it gives me a quick view of all of the different things I could say, all the different voice commands I might use when jumping between my different apps, which is also the next big thing I wanted to call out, which is that we have automatic control switching automatically enabled for Cephable professional users. This feature is a pro-only feature right now, or Cephable Education. If you're using your, yes, I can try to turn my mic up a little bit. Hopefully that's not going to be too loud for everyone else, but thanks for calling it out, Rudy. If you're using the personal version, then you still need to manually switch your controls. So the intelligent control switching is part of the pro features, and it's on by default. Beyond being on by default, you now also have all of the hundreds of applications that Cephable's AI is trained on out of the box. You do not need to set up profiles for all these apps, meaning that if you installed Adobe Photoshop and you've never used it before, you do not have to go create controls in Cephable for Photoshop. It exists. You open Photoshop and your controls are set up for Photoshop, and you're ready to just start using your voice or using your face or using buttons from your phone and just letting Cephable get out of the way. For all of the Google tools, all of the Microsoft tools, you can see in this sort of list here, these are all just out of the box, ready to roll. Everything in the operating system, File Explorer. If you're on Mac, you'll have Finder controls and all the different Apple apps ready to go. Let me go turn off my Teams notifications before people start seeing all the fun stuff the chat is saying on the internal side. And basically all of that is out of the box. You do not need to set up and customize it. That being said, you still can. For example, I have some custom Microsoft Teams controls, and you'll see all your custom ones up at the top. And your customizations are basically there to be able to select. So for example, I use Outlook a lot. I use Visual Studio Code and PowerPoint a lot. And Edge, obviously, those are probably the ones I use the most. And so I have some customizations within those. You can still switch to profiles manually or switch your app controls manually. You can create new ones very easily still too. You can use Cephable's AI to generate controls. But it's way easier now to associate those different app controls to the actual app that's going to be running, so that as you're running around and just doing stuff, whether you're using a voice command to open up another app or something else, it just works. Meredith, I see your question. Does it work for Chrome apps? The automatic control switching currently will switch to whatever the browser is. If it is an installed Chrome app, something like Clipchamp, for example, is one that we have, that does work out of the box. However, if you're actually in the browser, the app is going to be the browser controls for now, but we have updates to that coming in future versions where you'll have like your Chrome or your Edge profile or controls, and then you'll also have like your YouTube controls, and you can use both at the same time. That's going to be coming soon. But if it's a downloaded Chrome app or a web app or a PWA, all the different ways you want to refer to it, those do work when you're switching, which is pretty cool. So all the apps, all the controls out of the box. You do not need to set up and customize them anymore. They are just available for you to use in Cephable Professional. And if you're using the free version of Cephable Personal, you still get tons of different apps. You won't get all of the ones that are available in Pro, but it's still, a little over 100 different apps that it's pre-built with. You can easily swap to them. You can use your voice to switch to those controls too. From Microsoft Word built in, Google Docs, YouTube, all the operating system stuff, all the Windows controls, things like that. All out of the box. If you switch apps manually, will it go back to switching automatically, or you have to turn that back on? It is back to switching it automatically. For folks that were using the preview version of automatic control switching, the way that it works now is a lot easier. There's no longer this weird temporary off middle state. It's just on or off. So if you don't want the control switching, let's say, for example, you just want your custom controls for one thing and you want to use it across all of the apps, you can still turn that off and just use your set of controls. Or if you do switch, like for example, I just switched to my custom, or maybe I'll switch to like Zoom, my custom controls here. If I then switch over to Microsoft Word, it switches back over to Microsoft Word. So it's only temporarily switched to that custom profile if you have it on. You don't have to go back and like, oh, I switched to Zoom and now I need to go back and turn on my automatic control switching before I go to Word. None of that anymore. It's on. If you change it, it's off until it needs to change again. If you want it forever off, you can turn it forever off. So all of the apps, all of the controls, this beautiful panel, which again, you can just tuck away and it's still running in the background and it's still switching your controls for you, and all the wonderful stuff that makes it so that you don't have to look at Cephable as much, which is kind of the goal. We don't want you to have to see this interface very often, but you also have new settings to be able to manage more intelligent microphone controls. In a previous version, we had shown intelligent voice commands in preview, and the new intelligent dictation feature in preview. These are now the defaults for professional users. You can turn them off if you don't want to, but just to sort of recap them, intelligent voice commands tell Cephable AI to better predict the action you're trying to take in the app that you're controlling without having to like exactly match a voice command. So for example, like where I have these Microsoft Word controls, I don't have to say save exactly in order to hit save, or save document or save file. I can actually just say like, hey, could you save that for me, or save it, enter, type this. Like you can kind of speak a little bit faster, a little bit more fluently, and Cephable starting to figure out the different actions it should take for you without you having to come in and add all sorts of different variations of ways you might say save, for example. So intelligent voice commands on by default. It's a new way that voice commands work for pro users and for EDU users. And similarly for intelligent dictation. I had shown some previews of this in past live streams where Cephable's dictation can, again, all running on device, so your audio is not being streamed anywhere. There's no cloud service doing this dictation. Will handle things like automatic formatting of sentences and grammar and punctuation and proper nouns and acronyms and phone numbers, email addresses, URLs, and you can basically just talk the way that you want it to be written and just let Cephable take care of it for you. You can disable intelligent dictation if you want to go back to the sort of quick dictation or the default mode where you need to say your punctuation. You're not going to get all the automatic formatting and everything else. But this is on by default for new professional users as well. So just to show you what that looks like real quick, I'm going to jump back into Microsoft Word, and I can start dictation either with a voice command to switch to that dictation mode, or in the panel, I can easily click over here to start dictation. So now that I'm dictating, it's going to show all of the text and automatic punctuation and everything else just typed right here into Word. The intelligent dictation feature is still running entirely on your device. It's using new AI models to enhance the accuracy of things as you say them, and you can still tell just how quickly it works here too. People are using intelligent dictation for all sorts of cool things. We have people that have started to transcribe entire meetings in real life and actually use that information to have it written into their own app instead of having it managed on a cloud service too. I can easily switch back to command mode again, either by clicking here. So now it's no longer going to type what I'm saying. But even just quickly looking here, acronyms simply like AI models to enhance accuracy of things. You can go back and double check to make sure this is as accurate as I believe it is, because it should be handling all the punctuation, comma separation, intonations for question marks and exclamation points and everything else. The cool thing about this too is that while I'm showing it to you in Word, this doesn't just run in Word. You can use intelligent dictation anywhere you are typing things. You could be writing the description of a PowerPoint slide. You could be writing a message back in Teams or Slack. You could use it to dictate an email and so much more. But dictation isn't the only way that we can use our voice to write stuff. New to version 3.0 is Cephable's intelligent text generation. Just like how Cephable's dictation models and the other AI models always run on your device, you can actually now ask Cephable to generate text for you. So if you don't want to dictate an entire thing, you can tell Cephable to generate it with a simple generate command. And you can even tell Cephable's generative AI more information about how you like it to be prompted and how you like your tone to be. So all of your preferences for things like, for example here, I have stuff like I always want to be factual, how I sign my email signatures if I'm generating emails, when I'm writing code, how I like to leave comments, and how I like to write documents. But what's cool about the way that Cephable does this text generation is it actually takes into consideration the application that you're in, the context of anything else that you might have provided it, in order to generate the most accurate text. So for example, I just talked about how cool dictation is. Let me go ahead and actually generate another paragraph about how cool on-device dictation is. Generate a paragraph talking about the privacy and security concerns and benefits of doing dictation offline. Now you'll see it in the top right, it's starting to generate and think, and it's just going to start writing for me. So I don't have to do anything, I can just sit back, let it start writing. Now to get it to stop, maybe I want to try something else, I want to undo it, or I just need to switch tasks and I need to stop generating for me. You can do it a couple ways. One, you can use a command to stop generation, or you can just click into another app, including into the Cephable panel. So I've clicked into the Cephable panel. You notice that this switched back to listening. It's no longer running that generation stuff. If I click back into Word, it's no longer generating that text either. But you can have it generate code if you're writing code. It can generate email content. It can generate documents. It can generate messages and response and pull all of the information and context around it in order to basically give the most accurate and also just most useful information, all without ever sending that data to like a chat GPT or to any cloud service. It's all running entirely on your device, which also means that after you've downloaded the models and run it the first time, you can use intelligent dictation and you can use intelligent text generation without having an internet connection at all. You could be on an airplane, over the middle of the Atlantic and be able to generate text and to dictate with this level of accuracy, which is pretty cool. So what types of things, I'm curious to know, would you be using the generation to do? Like, what would you be generating in your day-to-day? What's the stuff that you find tedious in writing yourself? And, how do you sort of feel about some of this on-device AI capabilities? Bryce, can you tell us the local models you are using? If not, that's cool. I don't need to know. Bryce, it's models that we've partnered with Microsoft on working on. So I'll go as far as sharing that it's smaller, more fine-tuned models that are built specifically to run on device, especially if you're using a Copilot Plus PC or an AI PC. So after you say generate, can you think of it just like you were entering a prompt on an LLM? Yeah, that's exactly right, Steve. So it is doing LLM stuff. It is generating text. Yes, more like an SLM. But it is meant to actually take the context of the application you're in. You can prompt it. This also means that like when you're thinking about your text generation settings, like this is literally an additional prompt that is going to help tell the model what it should generate. So it can go through a couple different steps to basically try to output the right type of text content for you. Great questions though. Cool. So again, sort of quick recap of all the major things. Whole new panel interface, which I'm a big fan of. You can easily toggle your camera and voice controls on. You can manage and view all your app controls. You can collapse these as far as you want to. You can view all your different global controls, including that generate and stop generating ones, which are new. There are also new device controls, some more easily minimizing, maximizing. Obviously, showing and hiding the panel also has a voice command you can use. What does the warm-up feature mean? This means that it will, when you have the warm-up setting on, we'll have the text generation generative AI model ready to go so that the first time you say generate, it'll start performing as quickly as you saw it there. If you have it turned off, then the first time you make a generate request, it just takes a little bit longer to spin up the resources. The trade-off is basically if you're on a lower end computer, it needs to take up a little bit of memory and have it sit there while you're waiting to generate. So if you're not using text generation a lot, then you can just turn this off and then just generate when you need to. And it'll just use less resources on your computer, but be a little bit slower. That's basically it. So here we go. I'm a certified lead advocate for the Amputation Coalition, currently writing letters to political figures. I'm also working on writing a novel. Very cool. Well, you should definitely try using some of the new intelligent dictation features to make your life a little bit easier in writing all that, because typing it can be quite a pain. Couple other things to note. So we have the new panel, which is great, and you can hide it, and you can move it around, and you can view all your controls. And obviously we've been talking about voice. Voice is a very primary input for what we do with Cephable, how we run our AI and how we do things more automatically for you. It's the most common input that users use every day. But the other one is camera controls, which obviously we've been doing since day one too. And you can still run entirely from within the panel. You can run your camera controls and your microphone controls at the same time. But the biggest new thing with camera controls is that there is brand new head mouse settings for all sorts of levels of customizations. We had shown some of these in preview before. There was a feature flag before it, so you could get to some of these preview versions. Some people have already played with this a little bit, but I want to just talk through some of the core ways that you can use the new head mouse controls, because this is the default. If you don't need head mouse controls, you just turn it off and you can use your head controls for all the other stuff. If you want to use head mouse controls, then there's 3 different modes we support right now: steady glide, speed boost, and dynamic glide. Steady glide will make it so that as you're doing the gesture to move your mouse, for example, I use head turning a lot, so turning my head to the right and left will make it move at the consistent speed in any cardinal direction, up, down, left, right, and diagonals, based off of where my head is. As long as my head is to the right, it'll just continue to glide steadily, if you will, to the right. Speed boost acts a lot like steady glide, except that it will accelerate, meaning the cursor will move faster and faster the longer you are holding that position. So instead of having to wait a long time, if I need to go from one side of my screen to the other, I can still hold whatever that position is and wait for it to get there, and it'll get there a little bit faster. And then we have dynamic glide, which, similar to speed boost, has a way to accelerate how quickly the mouse moves. But the mouse actually moves faster the further you move your head. So for these two, as long as you have hit the point where it's detecting that you're turning or tilting your head, it'll start to do those movements. With dynamic glide, if I have head turning as my default, and then I turn my head further and further to the right, it'll go faster and faster, basically. So you can basically play around with each of these different modes. There's custom settings within them. Dynamic glide has the most options. If you're just getting started with head mouse controls, I recommend starting with steady glide so you can get comfortable with the different movements, then move into speed boost, and then move into dynamic glide if you're able to get a much wider range of motion. Otherwise, I recommend sticking to steady glide and speed boost too. Steve asked, what resource does the feature depend on? CPU, GPU, and RAM. I'm assuming you're talking about the text generation that we were showing before. The RAM usage, it all kind of depends on the machine, because we can try to do more things faster if we have more resources available. But we're working on actually NPU support for Copilot Plus PCs. So with Snapdragon or Intel Lunar Lake or with AMD AI PCs, we're working on getting it all to run on the NPU, which is pretty cool. If you have a GPU that can accelerate and the GPU is not overwhelmed, then we can run it on the GPU, including an integrated GPU. Doesn't need to be an entire thing. I'm running all this on a laptop, by the way. So like, this isn't like a whole big desktop with a dedicated GPU. And then if you don't have a GPU, it can still fall back to CPU. In terms of RAM usage, it uses up about 2 gigs of RAM while generating. All of this is just while it's generating. When it's not generating, it'll spin down. So we basically try to accelerate as much as we can. So higher end machines, it just generates faster. Lower end machines, it takes a little bit, but there is this is a professional feature. It's built for more commercial grade laptops specifically. But you do not need a big dedicated desktop. You do not need a dedicated GPU. You can run the entire thing from a laptop, including while I'm literally streaming this, which is using a lot of my GPU on its own. Sarah asks, is dynamic glide just based on your head movements, or do on-screen clickable elements affect the acceleration as well? Right now, it's just based off of how far you move your head. However, we're doing all sorts of fun stuff with interacting more with clickable elements. Although you probably know a little bit more about where we're going with that stuff than other people will, given your last name that I see in chat. But great question. Right now, it's just based off of purely how your head moves, how far you move it, or where your cursor is. These do also, by the way, work so much better now than past head mouse does on complex multi-monitor setups. So like, even if you have like a laptop in front of you and then like 3 screens that are different resolutions and positioned all over the place, it handles those scenarios so much better than it did before, where before you might get stuck in weird spots, or like it would be very jumpy in certain cases if you've tried head mouse before. New stuff works so well across all these different monitors. But those, I think, are the main things I wanted to walk you all through. New head mouse stuff obviously is exciting, but the intelligent voice commands, intelligent dictation, on-device text generation, and generative AI capabilities, all brought to you in a nice little compact panel that you can tuck away and sort of use and position it how you like. Ultimately, what we're trying to get to with this version 3 is a whole new foundational point where we want Cephable to be a tool that is just easy to use, where you don't have to go in and build custom profiles and custom controls, that you're starting from a place where you just use the apps you want to use every day, and Cephable is just a tool and an assistant behind the scenes to help you do it more easily. And so you'll see a lot more functionality coming soon that's sort of built around that spirit as well. that's making things a little bit more productive for anyone to use, that's focused on privacy and performance so that we're not streaming anything that would feel sensitive or personal to the cloud of any kind, that is entirely on your device and that you can rely on even in an offline situation. And that ultimately just makes everyone's life a little bit easier getting things done. But curious to know from folks in the chat, what are some of the other things you'd like to see come to the panel interface? What are the other types of apps or interfaces you'd love to see us start to control? And what are some of the other generative AI capabilities that you're thinking about beyond just having Cephable write stuff for you across your different apps, whether it be code, documents, or otherwise? Would love to see whatever ideas, or if people want to see anything else, I'm happy to stick around and show you anything else across the app. I'm also scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, Mary, you asked, in dictation, is there a way to do the punctuation manually but have the other AI enhancements? So in terms of like the punctuation and structure and stuff like that, not right now. It's sort of like an all-in, just let Cephable write it as you're speaking it. But we are looking at ways to be able to do the manual punctuation that we do in the sort of default, the sort of free version of the dictation model, but adding some of the other things. So it's definitely not out of the question. But right now it is very focused on just I need to write something and I need to just say what I want it to write and have it be written for you. Saw Tristy's comment, automatic app control switching does prioritize your custom ones. You might have noticed that how I have my custom Word set of controls here. When I opened up Word, it switched to that. But there is also the default. So yes, it does prioritize your custom ones if you've made them. Curious about connecting X keys as an adaptive switch to turn dictation mode on and off. Great question. We do. So, okay, this is like a little bit of like a sneaky, somewhat hidden feature within Cephable, but we have support for a couple different switch devices, and I believe X keys, the XK3 and the XK12 are the two that we support, where you can add them as an input into your app controls. It's nothing official yet. There's basically working with any of the switch input devices. We have to be able to handle like the low level custom HID events, not to get too technical, versus like being able to remap a physical key. The example we use a lot is like if I wanted to use an Xbox adaptive controller, plug it into my Windows machine, and remap the A button to do something different through Cephable, we would run into challenges where Windows handles the A button first, and then we would have to detect that and do something else with it, which like the A button is being treated like the Enter key, for example. It's not exactly the same, but similarly. And so intercepting existing like HID standard stuff like controllers and keyboard devices can be a challenge. But the thing is with a lot of the X keys, like the XK3 and XK12, like they actually allow for getting low level access to the switches. And that's why we're starting to play and continue to play with how we can map those. So if you have one of those devices, let us know. We'd love to talk to you more about sort of that use case and figure out how we can support those as additional inputs too. The alternative is you could use your phone and have virtual buttons set up there, which one of the areas that we're looking at, exploring, expanding on is bringing the virtual buttons and automation that comes with it into the panel as well. So I'd love to hear if people, like the idea of not just having their voice commands and their camera controls running in the panel, but if you had that grid of buttons that you could click on here to do stuff in another app, like maybe I'm playing a game like Minecraft and I have like my go and stop buttons that I could click more easily, or if you have a touch screen, being able to have on the sort of side panel to have those quick actions, and then you switch to PowerPoint and it's your new slide, next slide, bold, copy, paste, duplicate slide buttons, like that sort of level of like as you're going around to all your different apps, you have these sort of contextual buttons that switch with you too, is an area that we're exploring, but would love to know what people think of that. But anyway, appreciate all the love in the chat. If you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube channel, please do, because we're going to be doing more streams, introducing more features and all sorts of new stuff that we're sharing. We also, probably should have mentioned this earlier, we built all new step-by-step guides for everything. Obviously, there's a lot of changes in V3, And so all of these have brand new guides. So all new videos, for example, if we go into camera controls, you can watch the entire video of camera controls, and you get these nice little step-by-step guides with exact places to click and do stuff. If you're not sick of seeing my face yet, you can see more of it here, and be able to sort of interact with it that way. What about mouse grid feature? I'm just thinking of it being able to get rid of dragging. Yeah, the sort of voice grid feature, we've definitely had a few requests about. We have some stuff coming that I think makes voice grid a less ideal implementation versus some of the other stuff with like more mouse automation and sort of this see it, say it, do it kind of thing that we're playing with. But voice grid is definitely not off the table for us. So it's been something we've been playing with for a little bit. You can also use voice access as voice grid on Windows if you're on a Windows 11 machine too. And you can use voice access, voice grid, plus Cephable's, app controls and automation and dictation and everything else all at the same time too, which is nice. Rudy, I see, especially on iOS, would be great if while using the voice, I could use the virtual buttons as well. Is this something I've talked about a couple of the ladies about? Oh, so you're saying how when you're using the mobile app, the companion app, the buttons or voice is sort of how you have to do it versus on desktop, we can run more at the same time. Yeah, I agree. It would be great to have both going. It's a little bit more resource intensive on the mobile side than it is on desktop. So there's some limitations that we have to work around, but it's definitely the type of feedback we want to hear. Something like voice control where there are numbers over interactive things on the screen. Yeah, again, like if you want that type of like saying a number type of thing, like I would recommend even just looking at voice access for those types of interactions. Where we're going with voice controls is trying to get it so that you don't have to look at numbers and say numbers, and I should be able to just look at the web page and say go to camera controls and have it go to camera controls and more naturally handle it that way. Because we get a lot of feedback that the number stuff is just tedious and it feels like a less natural way to communicate, but all ideas are open with how to use the voice to interact with stuff. Ultimately, we're just trying to get it to the point where it's just faster to say what you want the apps to do and for it to do it. But I'm going to wrap up here. If you have more questions, please join our Discord. Share your ideas. If you're stuck on anything, go to the Need Help section. Check out the new step-by-step guides, which you can get to from the website in resources or from the app like you saw me do there. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Appreciate you all, and we're excited to show you, what's coming next after V3 because we're certainly not stopping here. So stay tuned, and I'll see you again soon.